start record. So
Cool.
we are recording, folks.
So Sean, while we're waiting for any other ones, your next question on the list was the one that I was hoping you'd start with, which is what board game should we all have at home to weather quarantine? Uh, I've mentioned this a couple times recently on the podcast. We are addicted to this game called Dominion. I don't know. Has anybody ever played that one by chance? No, it's it's like a deck building game. It's the first card deck building game that we've ever played, and I mean we are so beyond like absurdly addicted to this. My kids and my wife are playing right now while I'm on here. They're like, "Oh, you're missing like the game number 7 of the day." I'm like, "All right, guys, we can take it easy for 30 minutes here, you know." But it's really cool. It's infinitely playable essentially because they have all these expansion sets and they're not terribly expensive. So I sheepishly will admit here that we bought 9 of the expansion sets. So we can play for however long this quarantine is, or hopefully however short it is.
Yeah, Brad, we're more of the Cards Against Humanity at our house, but we've looked at Dominion several times. That looks like a good one. Anybody been to Blue Bridge Games in town? Yeah, so on Fulton, it's a great new place. He has closed for the current time being, but just has really good knowledge of games. He's an ex CPA as well, so he's gotten into to gaming as well.
I think Kelly's saying here that we love it so much. My husband made his own version of the cards. That's fantastic. Yeah, Kelly, we're a little far behind. We have 9, I think, of the 13 because Menagerie's just supposed to come out any day now. So just a little sidebar. Anyway.
Nice. And just a heads up for everybody, please go ahead and put your questions in the chat. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question out loud too, that's totally fine. So we are live. It's now 7 o'clock, so you guys are welcome to go.
Yeah, I guess while we're waiting, we can kind of, oh, there we go. What's your favorite purchase? Oh, that's cool. So I'm not sure first name there, but what's your favorite purchase?
It's Nicole.
Oh, hey, Nicole. Sorry.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
We made a hot tub purchase a long time ago, and it's really been something that's been super fun lately to kind of bring us to paradise, right? When we're stuck in our home and on our property. And I saw that question posed, my sister posed it on ChooseFI the other day, and I was curious if there's any one thing that's kind of been a lifesaver for you guys.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny because we were actually contemplating buying a hot tub. I don't know if anybody's ever looked into this, but you can buy this is like the ultimate Fi like hot tub version. You can buy them that they're like these blow up versions. It sounds like super cheesy. I fully admit that when you hear it, but they're like $300 or $400 on eBay, and we had one a bunch of years ago, and it lasted for like 2 or 3 years. Maybe it might not last through a Michigan winter, but it was good. It was good for us certainly. So anyway, to actually answer your question, I think we actually we're trying to make like a gym in our house, and our girls are now working out with us, which is really so much fun. So we actually bought a one of these like devil's machines. It's like it's an air assault bike. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that, but it's not just like you think of like a little exercise bike and you're like, oh, that sounds cute. But this is just like you go on it for 30 seconds and you want to crawl in a hole essentially. But but it has really made this gym complete to the point where, I mean, no joke, 6 days a week, the 4 of us are down there doing like a CrossFit style workout. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I think that's, we're trying, I think, kind of the larger point is, and I think all of us right now are this is uncharted for all of us, right? We're trying to figure out like, what the heck do we do to fill a day? Like, what is a day, a week, a month look like? And I mean, I think we're just trying to add some structure to our days. And, that starts with this workout in the morning. We have board game time a couple times a day. We have some quiet family reading time, and we're just trying to make the best of it. And so yeah, I guess that's my somewhat long answer to your short question.
Kind of as a follow-up question, since we've been on this little quarantine for the last couple of weeks, like my wife and I have been just going towards full head of steam the last 6 months or so, and trying to get to, being able to have that option to retire early or be financially independent. And then when this hit, we're like, what are we going to do? Like this first week, we were such in a funk. I don't know about anyone else, but I was like, maybe we aren't ready to, take this on full on with, retiring early if we're kind of in this funk without all the structure. So I was wondering if anyone else was kind of dealing with the same thing where, this week off or 2 weeks off now, it's like, what can we do? What can we do to fill our time? And does this feel like what retirement's like?
Yeah, I'll certainly let somebody else jump in. I'll just talk for a minute while people are thinking about that. But, I think honestly, the whole retire early part of this is just a distraction. Like, I don't know anybody. I mean, people who have been saving money for their whole adult lifetime. Like, I don't know anybody that's just sitting on a couch doing nothing or sitting on a beach doing nothing. Like, so to me, it's just like the FIRE acronym is like this super like cute acronym in essence, right? But I don't know anybody who's retiring early. So to imagine that you're just going to be sitting there, I mean, this is extreme, clearly. But I mean, you're not going to be in the house doing nothing or even doing something. Like, that's just not the way that our lives are going to look going forward. So, I mean, to me, it's just find something. FI gives you the freedom to do what you want with your life and add value where you want, irrespective of how much money you earn. You very well might earn money in the future, and that's great. I mean, we're not, and nobody's averse here to money, right? Or earning money, obviously. But the cool thing is you're not then required, right? Like, once you get to that point of financial independence, and I mean, I think your name was Steve. It flashed by quick, so I apologize, but I'll go with that. So Steve, cool. Okay. Oh, and I lost my train of thought with yeah, I mean, I think what this has proven to me, and a lot of people, like, we had some reporter from like a big paper saying like, oh, is coming to us like, oh, is this gonna be the end of the financial independence or the FIRE movement? I'm like, to me, it's like, it's the polar opposite of that. I think tens of millions of people are waking up to the fact that, like, what they thought was like a comfortable life, because they were just getting by, right? And they were enjoying themselves, and that was great, but that's not good enough anymore, right? Like, so I think moving towards a point of financial independence is always going to bring you more freedom and autonomy, and frankly, like, as less stress. Like, I think less stress is one of the biggest aspects of this, right? Like, can you imagine how stressed you would be right now if you had $0 in the bank? I mean, can you even fathom that, right? So I know this was not exactly your point, but I think it's an interesting way to look at it. It's like, think about how much, I mean, this, by any measure, this is awful right now, right? Like, and we don't know where it's going, and we can all sit and spin our, wild fantasies of gloom and doom. But the nice thing is, like, this at least allows us to take a step back and say, all right, me and ours, we're going to be okay, and there's great comfort in that. So I think, it's accruing benefits of FI, regardless of whether you pull the fire trigger or whatever nonsense we want to call it, right? And sit on the couch all day. Like, I just don't think that's really the goal of anyone. But anyway, I know I said I would shut up, and there I talked for 3 minutes. So if anybody wants to jump in, that was a really insightful question. All right, I'll take that as a no.
Yeah, this is Nicole. I would add to that. I mean, our company has done some pullbacks recently where I work, and, I see it, as you said, Jonathan, it's hard to imagine if you had $0 in the bank, but I see it written on the faces of my colleagues, right, as these announcements were made, and I feel it in their anxieties, right? And there's anxiety in all of us, but at different levels, right? And I think that's the critical piece, that level, a little bit more comfort, right? More and more comfort of pursuing this FI lifestyle, and growing that gap between income and expenses over your life provides more comfort, even in uncomfortable times, right?
Yeah, and it allows you to make decisions from like a position of power, and like,
Right.
being able to, so it's not about just cash flow, right? Like, I am taking this, I guess sorry, I keep calling it, it's SARS-CoV-2. I know everybody's calling it coronavirus, but I'm taking this extraordinarily seriously. Like I know I might even be like a little extreme, frankly, but I'm taking it extremely seriously. We're on like 100% lockdown, and even to the point of like my mail and papers come in, I like don't bring them into the house. I like put them, in like this little holding pattern outside. And that's my own thing. I'm not implying that everybody needs to do that, but what this does is like, we just ordered today, we ordered food like from our local Wegmans or, grocery store, or whatever. And I mean, we've never done Instacart before, but frankly, like I didn't want my wife spending an hour and change in the grocery store. Yeah, food store. Nice. Very good memory. Very good memory. Yeah, I've Jonathan's gotten me to pull that out of my vernacular. It's such a bizarre Long Island thing, or at least a me thing. But anyway, so I, it's a premium to order groceries to be delivered, but like, and this is such a tiny thing. It's almost not even worth the minute here talking about it. But like, I didn't have to think about the money. Like to me, it was going to be $20 extra, but I didn't want Laura in the grocery store for an hour. I just didn't. And again, that might be extreme, but like that's a position I can do and not even think about, because we have assets, And I love that you can make choices from a position of strength. I think that's crucial.
I agree. And I think that spreads to others, Jonathan, right? If your mom and you were on the phone talking and hypothesizing, right? Oh, I wish I had ice cream. It's not worth the risk, right? Maybe not ice cream because that couldn't be delivered, but with a few keystrokes, you can make your mom's day, by having it delivered. And it, I think that position of strength help you and those around you, right? Those that you can reach out to.
Agreed. I love how Sean is is translating here for your local.
I love Wegmans too. It's
Nice.
It's a wonderful place.
It really is. It really, really is.
All right, who's up next? Any questions?
It's so funny. And like I have to say, I was on one of these recently where this wasn't through ChooseFI, and in my, kind of, I've described this in life as, on the podcast recently, is I've undergone like a big journey, self-improvement really over the last 10 years. And like, I can remember like sitting on these kind of meetings or sitting in a room and going around a circle and like being like deathly afraid of talking, or like I'd have a question and I just wouldn't ask it. So like, even as recently as a couple of weeks ago, like that old script kept running in my head. So if you're out there with a question, like, believe me, I'm the nervous guy. Like, please just ask me a question. I would, or let's just talk. Like, we're all going through some crazy stuff right now. Like, what's on your minds,
I'm Madrid. We are recent expats, and your brother leads the ChooseFI expat group, and I'm just wondering how he's handling the coronavirus or SARS-CoV-2.
Yeah, he is. So you guys are in Madrid now?
Yeah.
Okay. So he actually they were just in Spain. I don't know if he had mentioned that to you or not, but they got out right before I think everything got locked down about a week ago, and then they made their way to Canada right before Canada shut down their border. So they are actually in a hotel in Canada right now, thanks to travel rewards points. They were able to get a really a 14-night stay, and they're just camping out there. So they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. They really they knew they couldn't come back to the US because of stupid health insurance, and they couldn't risk that. So I think they were able to get on. His wife is from Wisconsin, so I think they were able to apply for Medicaid of all things in Wisconsin, and at least have the option to go back. So anyway, they are in Canada. They're kind of hanging out and figuring it out. And honestly, I don't know if they're going to have a job next year. So they're international teachers. They were actually they took a year off and they were traveling the world, and they got this job, which is one of the best international schools in the world in Shanghai, China. So, it's probably not looking wonderful, even just from like a visa standpoint. So, regardless of what happens, with the schooling. So anyway, they are up in the air. They are up in the air, but it's amazing how, health insurance, I mean, this is something we all talk about in the FI community anyway. Like like they literally, they can't come back to the US because health insurance is prohibitively expensive. So
Yeah,
it's,
we've had family ask us like, "Oh, are you going to come back to the U.S. because there's better healthcare?" And we're like, one, it's not better, and two, we can't afford to have healthcare in the U.S. right now. So
it's
it's
crazy.
been good.
It is absolutely crazy. Hey, I think
Yeah,
Sarah
Sarah had a question, Brad. So
yeah.
yeah, do you see it?
Yep. So, Brad, has your ideal number of months saved in an emergency fund changed at all with this pandemic? It certainly does. Yeah, it certainly does make sense. So, I think, I am fairly conservative with my finances. I think much more than Jonathan, especially, out of the two of us. I am pretty conservative. So, for me, I think personal finance and FI is all about, it's extraordinarily personal. Like, and I think that is one of the benefits of this community, is that there's no doctrine, there's no, you need to do X, Y, and Z to be a card carrying member. It's just, you need to be thoughtful and you need to understand yourself. And some of us, like, you won't know yourself unless you're tested in an environment like this also, right? Like, the answer could change. And I think I have I've long said I'm probably have too much cash lying around, and it's probably somewhere in the tune of 9+ months of cash in a very easily accessible liquid fund. I think, and I've always been content with that. I knew there was an opportunity cost, right? Like, I clearly could have invested that money, and certainly last year, right? What was the stock market up 30%? So I mean, there was a significant opportunity cost to that, but it's because I know myself and I know that I am prone to anxiety, and you know, I I couldn't sleep well at night if I didn't have an emergency fund. And now there's an important distinction here, right? Because while I might not have had a technical emergency fund, I might not have had this sitting in a savings account that I could access, in a given moment. Even still, obviously I have assets, right? I have investments in a Vanguard or Schwab or Fidelity account that are not inside an umbrella of a 401k or a retirement account. So I theoretically could have, and this is Big Earn from early retirement now, this is his contention, is you don't need an emergency fund, is what he says, because there's no true emergency that you can't just pay for it with a credit card and pay it off in the next month, or pay it off by just selling some equities and transferring it over to your checking and just paying it off. And I mean, that's a very valid point. And if anybody on this call has that same thought, like, i don't I don't blame you at all. I think it's a very legitimate. Yeah, Sean just raised his hand. I mean, I think that's very legitimate. It's certainly, you could make an argument over a 50+ year period, that's going to be your most optimized version. Now, again, I think it comes down to personal, like, what helps you sleep at night. And that's why, like, it's funny because I am a CPA, and I am, I guess, more mathematically inclined, but I understand that so much of this is about psychology and behavior. And I know that it's so easy to let our stupid little lizard brains take over and let the fear just override. And so I put little guardrails up. I put guardrails up of, I don't want to sell my equities because I don't know what the hell I'd do, frankly, right? Like, I don't know if I just hit sell on everything, like, at that point of fear. So for me, setting up a guardrail against my lesser self and having an emergency fund, there's value to that. But, I'm sure Sean can wax eloquently here on why that's not a smart decision, right? But again, it's personal, and that's the cool thing. Like, I'm saying that tongue in cheek, like, but why that doesn't make sense for him is really the appropriate way.
Brad, I don't remember, where were you on your financial journey, like around 2008? And, you know, if you had an emergency fund, how did that compare and how did that help you looking back at that event?
Yeah, yeah, that is a great question. It's funny. I don't know if it's like amnesia or some sort. I'm not gonna have a great answer to your question, unfortunately. But maybe this gives a little bit of flavor as to like, at that point we had savings. So I graduated college in 2001, and I was working as a CPA from September of 2001. Through all that nonsense, certainly, and well past it. We had been saving significantly that entire time. So I can't tell you precisely what our net worth was or anything like that, but
Sure.
it was certainly, it was decent. I mean, I could probably guess that, it was 8+ years of savings, right? So like, certainly a couple $100,000, I would assume at the very minimum. No, I mean, probably somewhere in that vicinity. So, to me, it didn't seem like a catastrophe because I was employed. I think one nice thing about being an accountant is, there are lots of accounting jobs. So I never feared for my family at that point. Uh, I did, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating a story you guys may have heard on the podcast numerous times, but I made a stupid speculative real estate investment, which wasn't an investment. It was just this speculative nonsense. And, you know, that caused me sleepless nights because, especially in that environment where, I mean, this was such a ridiculous speculation that those properties dropped, no joke, 80+%. And they never recovered. They were like these undeveloped pieces of land in like a, country club type community. Why a 25-year-old kid would be stupid enough to think this is some great investment? Like, I look back and say, like, what was I doing? Like, how stupid could you be? But I think that's the benefit of hindsight, right? Is like, you can look and say, all right, I learned something. I would never do that again. I look at investments now as businesses, kind of, more akin to how Warren Buffett does, as opposed to just, is some other sucker going to buy this for me for more than I paid for it, which is like the definition of speculation. So that's not exactly your answer about 2008, but it's all kind of, in my mind, it's all kind of tied up in it. But I didn't do anything drastic in '08, and I think that's a good thing. Like,
Sure.
I mean,
I think like you pointed out that it was a different situation, right? We all know that this is totally unprecedented for everyone, but you were working, so that that definitely puts you in a different mindset, right?
Yeah.
Where most of us are working from home or laid off or whatever.
Right. Yeah, agreed. That was much more garden variety Great Recession as opposed to whatever we're going through now. Yeah. So it looks like we're getting a bunch of questions. Sean, have you been?
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Yeah, thank you.
I would
everybody.
encourage anybody to go off mute, but also we should probably take a couple from the chat. So whichever ones you think are good. There's one from Jonathan further up about the stock pullback, and there's a few more closer.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't really talked all that much about the stock pullback. I mean, it's we are not market experts. I think I don't know if anybody really is, frankly, generally, and not less in these kind of times. I think, again, kind of going back to the lizard brain thing, it's very easy for us to let our emotions get in the way, and believe me, that's perfectly understandable. Like I said, I'm prone to anxiety and overthinking, certainly. So I can certainly commiserate with anybody who has had their hand over that sell button. When you see your net worth dropping by 10, 20, 30% in a couple of weeks, like, that's anxiety inducing. It just is. But I mean, I think for people who are on the path to FI, who have a steady job and obviously have a savings rate, right? Like, that's the bedrock of the financial independence. Like, just all of this is, spend less than you earn, right? And you have that savings. Like, you were buying, and I was buying happily the stock market a month and a half ago at 30% higher. Well, albeit it has come back up a little bit, but let's say 20% higher. So, it almost sounds like trite at this point, but I mean, assuming that this passes, and listen, it's going to pass at some point. But I mean, I'm not a medical expert. I have no idea. But this is clearly frightening, and we don't know if this is a 3-week thing or a 6 to 18-month thing, right? But like, if you believe in the companies, if you believe in a company, I don't like to pick individual stocks, but like somebody like Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, they have $130 billion of cash sitting, waiting for, to weather storms, and to find amazing deals. Like, is that company going to come out okay? Is Warren Buffett going to come out okay through this? I strongly suspect he will. And, again, I'm not advocating picking individual stocks by any means, but, if you believe in the American economy, it's one of these things where you can say, you can be all doom and gloom, but if the zombie apocalypse happens, and again, I don't mean to make light because, this is like a complete disaster, like it all goes to crap anyway, and it's all at zero. So like, you can't plan for that kind of nonsense. You have to plan for, okay, there will be some rational world, and me putting in money every week or every month is going to give me the highest likelihood of success over a 50-year period. And I think that's how I prefer to look at this is, there's going to be pain for the next X number of months. We just know that, right? But if you're thinking over a long enough timeline, and most of us are really thinking over 30 to 50 years, like, you need to keep investing, because you never know when you're going to miss a day like today that was, or, the last 3 days that are up 20%. You never know when you've hit the bottom. If you think you can time the market, you can. I can promise you that. So that's my general thought. I wish I had some amazing insight, but nobody does, frankly. So
It's always good to hear.
Brad, I wanted to ask you about that. You and Jonathan seemed pretty jazzed after talking, I think, to Brian Feraldi on episode 75 about individual stock investing. So I was just curious if you guys ever did that, or if you're planning to do that with some fun money now that the risk might be a little bit lower with a lot of stocks already dropping.
Yeah, it's a great question, Sam. It really is. I mean, I didn't really, I kind of tipped my cards a little bit there a minute ago. It's no secret that I'm a huge fan of Warren Buffett. I mean, I think, what I did was, because again, I am over invested, if you will, in cash. I actually, in the rundown of this, I actually wound up setting, for the first time in my entire life, a limit order. So what I did is I went into Vanguard and I set what I thought was an absurdly low price. I think it was $160 for, whatever, something nominal, like 100 shares of Berkshire Hathaway. And like, I didn't think it would ever get filled. And then lo and behold, I went into my email and it's, order executed, 100 shares at $160. So, that's a company that I would have been happy buying 2 months ago at 220. And, I picked it up. I mean, is that life-changing amount of money for me? Like, whatever, 16 grand or whatever it is. Like, no, obviously not, but it's not nothing. And, I think there are potentially ways, if you find companies like Brian, like he would argue, and, Warren Buffett would argue, you can find companies that have like great management, have, moats, as they call it. Like, I mean, is it stupid to take some little bit of fun money and do that? No, I don't think so. I mean, is that like, obviously, I think, and I want everybody to be clear here that I'm not advocating doing this with all your money. Like, for a tiny little percentage, like, I mean, there might be some bargains to be had now, and that's, amidst all the doom and gloom, even if it's just fun, like you said, Sam, even if it's just fun, do it for fun, keep your mind active. Like, there's nothing wrong with learning. Like Brian opened my eyes to like how he approaches it. And I didn't go and invest, or change my strategy, because I didn't really want to invest the time, frankly. Like, it wasn't worth it for me. But now, maybe as facts on the grounds change, it is interesting, if nothing else. All right, we got so many questions here. I'm sorry, I'm very long-winded, as you guys know. I don't need to rush out of here at 7:30 either. But.
Yeah, I want to be conscious of your time. So, we'll take any minutes you got for us.
Yeah. Cool. Let me, just bear with me. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to go through the chat here and just make sure
Yeah, it looks like Kelly has one.
At at the way bottom.
Yeah, so 7:21. Does that help to give you the time?
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's interesting. Do you think there will be a sudden flood of podcasts with social distancing and job transitions? Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I have to say, like, I've been fascinated to see just like these Zoom calls, right? Like, when would I have ever had a chance to meet any of you guys? Or, like, never. Like, in all likelihood, other than maybe at a who knows, some campfire or something, if just randomly in passing. But I think there's a lot. I guess, like, in these kind of crazy times, you never know. Like, humans are such social animals, and it is so hard. Like, I mean, it truly is, like, staying in your house all day. And, like, I see friends passing by, and it's like I, like, wave and say hello, and that's it. And, like, that's not really good enough. But, like, this is awesome. And my daughters, and yeah, Kelly, I am getting around to your actual questions about podcasts. But I think these kind of meetings, like, these can bring people together. Like, I actually reached out to a bunch of, like, my old high school friends who I haven't talked to in a couple of years, and, like, suggested, hey, at a convenient time, like, let's do something like this. Like, I would challenge everybody out there, like, think about one person you haven't talked to in a handful of years who you used to be close with, and just send them a text message or send them a Facebook message or whatever, WhatsApp or whatever it may be. Just say hello. Like, if we need to look for bright sides out of this, and I think they're there. Like, what I was going to say is, like, people are pivoting, and I think it's cool. Like, I've seen and you guys are sadly probably going to hear this exact verbatim thing tomorrow on the podcast if you listen, so I apologize in advance. But, like, my daughters, they have a piano teacher who lives less than a mile away, and we can't go to her house anymore, so we did it through Skype. And I thought that was awesome. Like, this woman would have lost her entire side income, and she said, why not try it, right? So, that worked. My CrossFit gym is now doing Zoom classes, and we did a class this morning, and it was 95% the same as being in the gym. And I mean, it was amazing. It was really amazing. And, like, again, human beings are social animals, and we're going to find ways to connect. So, yeah, I mean, I know I've been trying so desperately to go on, like, a lower information diet, but I know I personally, Kelly, to your actual question, like, I've subscribed to probably 10 new podcasts in the last 2 weeks. And, I think we will see something like that. I think people need to connect. And if we can't do it face to face, then, the voice certainly does the trick to a large degree. Let me see. Hold on.
Yeah, Brad, there's one from Antonella and Bree and Steve, probably about 7:15, 7:17. One from Sam, a little bit higher, about credit card rewards too. You don't see those.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, guys. Where's the Antonella? I saw something about Headspace, but I don't know. Oh, practicing gratitude and meditation. Yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, I'm not looking at my phone to be rude. I'm trying to find what I use. Yeah, Headspace is phenomenal. They have a free, like, 10-day course that you can just essentially listen to over and over again. There's this kind of cool meditation that I do that it just relaxes me so, like, fundamentally. It's crazy. It's called you Google, what is it? It's this weird sounding thing. So it's yoga nidra. And Sam, hold on, Sean, let me write it. It's not like yoga, but I'll write it in the chat here. It's yoga nidra 10-minute, and just Google that, and it is, like, the single most relaxing meditation I've ever done in my entire life. So highly, highly, highly recommended. Cannot recommend it enough. I also use an app that Sam Harris has called Waking Up that I recommend as well. So yeah. Travel
Antonella,
hacking.
did you have a question?
Oh, I can read my question.
Yeah, go for it.
I was initially going to say that if you're a healthcare provider, Headspace is actually free up until, I think, the end of the year. You just have to have a national provider identification. So I'm a social worker, and so I've downloaded it because it was free, and it's been pretty awesome.
Wow, that is amazing. I've never heard of that before. That's awesome. That's really good information.
Yeah. I did have a question. I can't find it,
Oh,
but
I see it. Is it due to current events and people's
yes.
strong reactions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything you would communicate differently to your listeners before this pandemic hit? Wow, that's a great question. I love how everybody's having their happy hour now too. I see wine and beer. This is great. I had my little bourbon here before we got on. So yeah, this is a very good question. I think we have always tried to be extraordinarily optimistic. I think we've tried to, like, there's so much strife in the world, and there's so much, tribalism and arguments, and like we've said before, like Jonathan and I are like extraordinarily different people. Like if you looked at like the media like caricatured us, like we should hate each other, but we don't, because there's so many things that bring us together. And I think we've always tried to keep politics and things like that out of our podcast, and maybe it's come off as possibly like a little almost like naive, like naively optimistic. And I don't think I would change the messaging to the audience. I really don't, because I think people are looking for that nice like sanctuary where they can just get a little dose of optimism. And I think maybe people from the outside, like maybe the caricature would be like, oh, these fire people, like they're going to, as soon as the first downturn hits, like they're all going to run for the hills, or they're going to realize like this was all a sham or some nonsense. And like I just fundamentally disagree with that. Like I think what we're trying to do here is just live a better life, live a happier, more intentional life. And that doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money. And so I'm kind of, Antonella, I'm kind of not half answering your question here, but like this is how I would choose to answer it to like that person who's saying like, is fire just a sham now that this is, that the stock market's dropped 30% or whatever. And like, to me, it's almost like looking at the opposite. Like, would you be better off if you weren't saving money, if you were just living paycheck to paycheck? Like, so, I mean, that's ridiculous, right? Like, regardless of whether people are now set back a couple of years in, their financial independence timeline or not, like, you're in such a better position now. And I think if we ever, so I guess the actual answer to your question is like, if we ever said to people that like this was about early retirement, and like maybe we did early on, probably in like 2017, like I probably wish we could take that back. But but I mean, frankly, like we're learning, like that's the cool thing about like Jonathan and I don't proclaim to be experts in anything, like we're learning along with the audience. And I think we'd probably be louder about this has nothing to do with early retirement at all. And it just, there are going to be setbacks, and, you just have to look for what lights you up in life and what you get value out of. And knowing that this puts you in a better financial position, a better mental position, I think there's a lot of power in that. You said there was a travel rewards. So does this
Sam,
impact my travel miles accumulation? And then Sam had one about cashing them in, I think. Was that the one?
Yeah, Sam was asking about cashing them in, right?
Yeah.
For investing.
Yeah. I mean, so, right. This, to me, earning credit card reward bonuses, if we can. Now, obviously, like people's spending, that's going to be different now, right? Like we're not going out to the store and swiping our credit card. Not that we ever did that, like, willy nilly, but, I think for me, opening a credit card to get the bonus was always predicated on like, can I hit this sign up bonus without obviously spending additional money, like, because then it kind of, negates the value of the supposed bonus you're getting. So, you know, I think now is certainly still a good time to continue opening credit cards if you're certain that you can hit those spending requirements. So, like, that's kind of like the backbone CPA disclaimer here that I can't help but pass along. But, you know, I think this probably does change the calculus a little bit, because, frankly, like, who knows when we're going to be traveling again, or when we're going to be comfortable traveling again. I think if you're pretty certain that well, I think for anybody who hasn't started down the path to travel rewards, like, Chase Ultimate Rewards points are still going to be your best bet. Like, that's what I've said for years. And I think it's precisely because of that flexibility. So I think, if you have rewards points, they're going to be a whole lot more availability now. And I don't mean to make light of this. I just, kind of a little gallows humor here, but there's going to be availability. So you're going to be able to find Saver award tickets, once things, obviously, life gets back to normal, whenever that is. And B, the flexibility is, if you decide, hey, like, it looks like travel is not going to happen in the time frame that I wanted, you can always cash those points out for 1 cent per point. So, that's $1,000 for 100,000 Ultimate Rewards points. And to Sam's point, like, you can invest, and that's not a terrible decision at all. I mean, I think it's unknown with travel. What I would argue is, like, it's almost impossible to believe 2 years from now we're not going to be back to normal or normal-ish life and traveling and such. And the best time to start accumulating points is years in advance of when you're going to use them anyway. So, like, this is what I've always counseled people. And now, kind of the I don't know, I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but you're not going to go and spend them now. So you can just accumulate, and then take that dream of a lifetime type trip 2 or 3 years from now. So when you've had all that time. So I don't think it fundamentally changes everything all that much. Though I guess one could make the counter argument that, like, travel is going to be cheap for a while. And therefore, like, are you really getting the value out of using the points in the travel sense? Or to Sam's point, like, should you just cash them out and just pay cash for the actual travel? Would you come out ahead? I mean, I think it's going to depend, but I mean, if you can get a $200 round trip to Thailand, you're not going to use 80,000 points, obviously, right? When you can cash that in for $800. So, we're all smart people here. We can do the rudimentary math. I think the short answer is I would still, and I continue to still accumulate these points, because there's value in them no matter what. All right. I think I might have time for 1 or 2 more. I told my kids, come hell or high water, I'd be downstairs at 7:45 to watch Survivor. We're now watching season 40 here of Survivor on CBS All Access. So
yeah, Brad, we can't make you miss Survivor. So yeah, maybe one more.
Yeah, that sounds good. Do you see any ones that you thought were especially interesting? Thank you guys for all the comments. I hope this has been of some value to you, maybe, or at least somewhat entertaining, if nothing else. Antonella brought up a good point about negotiating retention offers instead of closing or downgrading. That's true. That's very, very true. Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I'm not.
There's maybe one good question from Nicole. There's actually several still good questions.
Oh, cool. I'm so sorry. It's so hard to catch.
Yeah, Nicole's got any skill building opportunities, favorites you've seen people try to do during this downtime?
Ooh. Oh, that is a great question. Oh man, I wish I had a good answer for it. I'm going to write that one down. That's something we could talk about on the podcast, actually. So Nicole, I'm going to not answer your question right now because I'm not qualified to answer it, but I think that's something we can crowdsource. I'm literally copying and pasting this into our little chat with Jonathan and Ed. So I assure you this will be mentioned at some point, but that you've seen that people could try. I mean, so all right, let's brainstorm this. Like, how would we think about, like, skill building? I mean, I think there are so many and I don't want to be cliche. I'm not going to be cliche and say like get a coding job. Like, I don't know anything about coding, like that's not going to be my advice, but like, I can tell you as someone who was the polar opposite of someone who created websites and had a podcast. I mean, I was a CPA sitting in an office doing corporate state tax returns for 13 years. Like, so, and then to go to this is like as far opposite as you could possibly be. And it's because I just took a chance. Like, I realized it costs virtually nothing to build a website. And frankly, like, for 99.999% of us, like, no, you're not going to like, this ChooseFI thing was lightning in a bottle, like I created websites and they added value and that was that. And like, nobody ultimately cared, but some people saved some money but I learned these skills to put myself in a position where if the right situation came along, I could take advantage of it. And I think like, that's how I think about skill building. So like, to me, skill building starts with reading. I think it always comes like, what are the fundamental things? Like, go get Poor Charlie's Almanac, from Charlie Munger, like, and read about mental models, read about cognitive biases. Like, think about like the things that, basic economics, like just things that will give you a background that like, when you can, I don't know, like this is, for me, I don't have any kind of world-class knowledge at anything. Like, my knowledge is probably at, what's this saying, like an inch deep and, a mile wide. But for me, it's probably 10 miles wide, like, because I just am interested in things. And like, I don't have the, like, and this is a limiting belief, but like my memory is just horrifically bad. So like, I'm not like, I don't seemingly have the ability to like become world-class at anything that I've ever set my mind to, because I usually forget everything. But what I am able to do, my brain is able to kind of, I don't know, synthesize different ideas from different areas. And I think just having a little background in essential things is all part of skill building. Look at even just like, what was it? The book, Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. Like, that's a book that'll knock your socks off. Read a book like, The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. Like, that gave me a language to something that I've always thought in my head, but I didn't have the words for it. And now I look at everything through the prism of the infinite game, as opposed to just winning these tiny little discrete things. So that's not going to make sense to anybody who hasn't read the book, but please, I implore you, read the book. Like, it changed my entire life in the last couple of months because I had language to describe something. So I think, my honest answer is like, skill building is just read far and wide. And I know that sounds like so obvious, but it just helps because your brain is then able to put things together that it otherwise would simply not be able to do. But where I was going at the beginning of that before I sidetracked was, even some dope like me who was doing corporate state tax returns was able to, like, I have like rudimentary HTML coding skills now. I have a skill to talk in public that this would have debilitated me. Like, I kid you not, like, I might look relatively comfortable at this now. This would have debilitated me. I would have been worried about this for days. Just like 3 short years ago. That is not hyperbole, days. And you know what I did? I just kept working at it. And, find those things that you're scared of and lean into them. Right? Like, if and again, I know this sound because I do seem relatively comfortable at this, and you hear me talk on the podcast, and like, it sounds like I might have, I'm not a natural like Jonathan, obviously he's like ridiculous, but like, I seem relatively comfortable. Like, I was the least comfortable person speaking in public in the entire world. And I just kept trying. And I think there's great psychological value in just finding something that scares you and just try it. Like, we are human beings. We are, as Tom Bilyeu from one of my favorite podcasts, Impact Theory, says, we are the ultimate adaptation machines, right? Like, we can learn anything. That is one of our great skills. And just like, that would be my parting advice, is just like, you've got a lot of time right now. We've got 16 waking hours and we're trying to fill it with something that would actually light you up, right? Fill it with something that scares you, that you want to learn about or be better at, right? Like, There is no better time. Look for a silver lining in this horrible, horrible situation and lean into something. You never know what's going to come out of it.
Well, Brad,
An
we just
awesome way to end. Thank you.
Nice.
yeah, absolutely. And I was going to bring everybody off mute for a second just to say thanks to Brad. So give him a big cheer.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, I had more fun than you can imagine, guys. This is great. Thank you so much. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the meeting. And hopefully we can do this again in the future sometime under maybe better circumstances. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, sir.
If you ever
All right.
make it up to Michigan, it's a beautiful place to be. Beautiful beaches.
Nice.
We're happy to welcome you.
Yeah, I hear they're good people there too, right?
Great here.
Nice. All right. See you, everybody. Have a good night.